6 and this is a 7 instead of.
Yeah. You're good to go.
We ready?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled Sylvania Township Board of Trustees meeting for April 18th at 5 p.m.
Call the roll. Mr. Crandall?
Here.
Mr. Mahoney?
Here.
Mr. Genowine?
Here.
Mr. Simcoe? Here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I know we've got a lot on our plate this evening, and I think we'll be in executive session for probably just as much time. So if we could kind of keep things moving along this evening, it would be greatly appreciated. Can we pass all three of the meeting minutes under one motion, Mr. Simcoe? Were we all present for all of them? And
I'll move to combine and approve. Regular meeting of March 21st, special meeting April 4th, and regular meeting of April 4th.
Second.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda? Has anyone signed in? All right. Zoning Department.
Good evening.
Hi, Daryl.
We have before you the monthly report for March for the zoning department. For permits issued, we were down just slightly on number of permits, but up significantly on estimated dollar value of permits. And then year to date, we were up 4.4% on number of permits and up 210% on estimated dollar value of permits. This is driven in large part by the single-family dwelling permits. They're up 26% on, Scott, if you can scroll down a little bit. Thank you. Up 26% on quantity and 101% on estimated dollar value of single-family dwellings. On the next page, zoning complaints. We had 27 for the month of March. As opposed to 7 a year ago, and then we're at 60 year to date as opposed to 26 a year ago. So those are also significant.
Thank you. Monthly meetings, the BZA had one case of variance on Whistling Oak. Zoning Commission did not meet, and Project Plan Review had one case for Moe's Southwest Grill on Monroe Street. Items of note, zoning permits were issued for the new Vision Associates building on Meyer Drive and a new multi-tenant commercial building on Central between O'Reilly and Burger King. Land use plan, we had the steering committee and the subcommittee meetings in March. Some of you attended those. Thank you very much for your participation. And Lucas County Plan Commission heard a zone change request for Presentum Road, that's behind Lowe's. The applicant has since withdrawn that request for an R5 PUD, and last time I talked to them about 2 weeks ago, they were going to be resubmitting for an R3 PUD, but we have not seen anything in our office yet. And that's all I've got.
Hey, Daryl, on the land use plan subcommittee, Mike White brought up some good points to you. Did you have any luck with Reveley on maybe being a little more focused on some of the questions that he was asking? Did you guys?
Yeah, Glenn and
Mike got together?
Tom Lemon met with Mike. I think they had lunch with him and addressed a lot of his questions.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Rob?
Good evening. Monthly report submitted for March. Completed or in progress. We had 64 locates. We had a great deal of tickets this month. You see 321, kind of an indication of what's going on in the township as well when people are calling an OOPS a type of construction. Anytime you dig, those are dig tickets. We did our traffic sign inspection and repairs. Received most of, or the majority of our grant material that we applied for last year, the sign grant material, which is around $14,000 in material. The March 8th windstorm set us up for our spring pickup for brush. We cleaned up about 25 locations, moved about 32 trees during that pickup in a 24-hour period, so that kept us busy. Snow was light this in March, very unusual. We had 2 snow ice control incidences. We did have a lot of rain, which kept us busy in the storm tile cleanout and repairs, and then we started preparing our equipment for brush pickup and preparing for storage. We did receive the Lucas County engineer's culvert report and maintenance for bridge. We started working on those items indicated that needed some either maintenance or scheduled repairs. As you can see, out of the 7 bridges, 2 of them are excellent, 2 very good, and 3 good, which requires no maintenance on any of those bridges within the township. The 39 repairs for maintenance were conducted, and I have 2 scheduled for contractor repair. The service department did their usual routine maintenance. We did repair 1 crashed vehicle and returned it to service, and decommissioned 1 other vehicle for the police department, and supported some fire training as well. And as you can see, the miscellaneous repairs on those pieces of equipment. Maintenance, annual or scheduled maintenance, regular scheduled maintenance. The annual fire extinguisher service was completed. Contractor comes in, checks all the fire extinguishers and dates them for us. The maintenance was also involved in some wind damage from over in the police station, conducted some boiler treatment, and still continuing work on the upgrades in the dispatch room, and finished up in the foyer for the new bulletproof glass for the police department's dispatch area, or front foyer, I should say. And he's also working with John in the area in here in the front foyer for converting to LED lights, to be more consistent and cost of energy. And then he also did a window for our building back here that was leaking, replace that. Page 2. You can look at that at your convenience. Those are just the project tracking list, where we're at with the projects that are scheduled throughout the year. Any questions?
Quick one for you. Any luck, not that, if you don't have an answer today, that's fine, but whatever happened with that road behind Taylor Cadillac about us putting some signs on Holland, Sylvania? For the trucks, and the guy that's been here a few times to...
For Goodhue?
Yes.
Yes, we did put the signs, requested that through Lucas County Engineers.
Okay, great.
We moved our sign up a little bit closer.
Okay.
They put a larger stop sign
Nice.
up at Goodhue that faces, if you're coming down Goodhue going east, that's what you would see as the stop. On the back of that stop sign, which is right at Holland, Sylvania, they put a no-through truck sign as well. So they did convert and check the rest of the area. We requested through that petition that will happen this spring or early this summer is a testing to see what the annual counts are, and through that. And then I've scheduled that road. I've moved it up a year in the road maintenance process. So that road has taken some damage from all the truck traffic. So.
Well, thanks for following through.
Yep. Any other questions?
Good afternoon.
Hi, Mike.
Presenting the monthly report. Fire responses are slightly up that you'll see, not much from last year. If you go to page 3, the EMS incidences are up over 100 from last year to this year. kind of make note of the bottom one where it says check the safety and assist. That only says one, but we've been working with Chief Bomey and Chief Rodas that on some of the check the safeties that are going directly to the police department are also going to start rolling over to us, so that we're going to cut down on response times. If they go to check on someone and they truly need EMS, we're going to be rolling with them without lights and siren to get going earlier. So you'll see that number probably increase a little bit next month. Page number 4, we have mutual aid received and mutual aid given. It was a 2 and a 2, so that one worked out rather well. Page number 5, Medic 61, you'll see a huge jump in Medic 61s. We had 75 incidents in the month of March. We transported 59, 6 went by private auto, and 10 were canceled incidents. So from our estimate of 30 a month, we're up just slightly. So, and that's getting our crews back in service much sooner, so that is working out. Page number 6, community risk reduction. Chief Freilich was pretty busy for the month also. He's working hand in hand with SCAT in the 2 high schools. We're going to do the mock accident for the juniors and seniors this year. We're going to try to combine them. With Northview having the new track and the new field, we can't put cars out there and land the helicopter and those kind of things. So working with the schools, we're going to bus the students from Northview to Southview, and we're going to add more cars and more patients to the mock accident and just do one this year. So Chief Freilich's been working very, very hard with the schools to get that accomplished. Very, very unusual for us because we normally do one for Southview and one for Northview, and it's a few weeks apart, so trying to get all the cars and everything together, he's done a great job for us. Building plans, he's still up. He did 6 plan reviews, met with the state inspector on a few of them. The state had a little problem with one of their inspectors. They lost an inspector, so Mike had some trouble getting some of the stuff scheduled because they had to bring guys from other counties in to handle Lucas County. Page number 7 is fire training. We are back to Lucas County EMS CEs. Also, we did some extended training with the new Sutphen engine. Also, I gave a mandate to Captain Fry to get out. It's been nice. I want him out. I want him at the training tower. I want him out visible and moving when we have nice weather like this. So coming up in the next couple weeks, we have our VFIS emergency driving training. We need to do that every 2 years so that we try to keep our insurance down. So that's mandated by the state and by our insurance company, and everyone participates in that. Page number 8 is the overtime. Ended up with 327.9 hours. Only one of them was for overtime staffing. Everything else was for planned things. So I am definitely keeping an eye on it, and we're working on it. We do still have one position open, and we have sent out background checks to get started, and I spoke with Mr. Burrell this evening, so we can hopefully push that up a little so that we can keep an eye on our overtime budget. So, any questions? No? All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Good evening. You have before you the monthly report for the police department for March, and I'm happy to say that unlike the fire department, it seems like we're down in a lot of stuff, which I guess is good. I don't know if it's the township getting older or what, but that's a positive. So we totaled 7,667 calls in dispatch. You can see the breakdown there. Most of them into the police line as usual. Page 3, calls for service, we are down. Traffic citations, we are down. Property damage, accidents were down. Injury accidents were up a little bit. Unfortunately, tragically, we have had one fatal that our accident investigation officers handled instead of handing it over to the state. We've got a lot of money invested in them in training and equipment, and they're very, very good, very proficient at that. As far as offense reports, burglaries were up a little. Robberies, of course, it's a very small number, so it's easy to skew, but we're down. Domestic violence, which is kind of a non-suppressible type offense, we're up. And we're way down on assaults. We are down in identity thefts a little bit. You can see that we have had 4 sex crimes, which is very unusual already this year. And we're down in thefts, and we're down considerably in all other reports. Page 4, I won't go over all the numbers. You can kind of see the right column is the important one. There were 65 cases assigned, of which they cleared 42 of them for the month. And then they actually cleared 26 additional cases for 68 total for the month of March. Page 5, the DEA, the detective in the DEA task force. Of note is about the last half of that paragraph there. That's stuff that is actually happening in the township. And interestingly enough, the DEA with the highway patrol and such, you can see orchestrated an investigation in which they were able to intercept 71 pounds of marijuana in the Walmart lot that was going to be delivered in Toledo here. And they ended up with arresting 2 subjects and confiscated 1 firearm from that vehicle. Also, Westridge Apartments continues to be a little bit of a problem. Since that went partly public or subsidized, government subsidized housing, it's not quite the quiet place that it used to be, and you can see that we're working on a possible drug dealer in there. Page 6, as far as community affairs and such, there were a lot of activities, but we were involved in the business expo, I think like the fire department was. And our officers that are involved or trained in Alice conducted some training. I think I mentioned it before at the JCC YMCA, that whole Jewish campus over there. Also at Impact Products, which involved a couple of different shifts. Page 8, you can see our overtime. We totaled 218 and a half hours. I will say that in dispatch, we actually had 2 dispatchers on midnights off at the same time for FMLA reasons, so it created a little bit of overtime there, more than we normally have. And then in patrol, you'll see an almost equal number, and that is basically, a lot of that's the CPT training, the mandated state training, of which we have to do 20 hours this year. There's talk we may have to do 40 hours next year, but nothing is firm. But that'll be interesting if we have to double it up. We've got pretty much all our CPT training done, with the exception of a few online courses that the state offers that officers take, an hour here, an hour there. So we're in good shape that way. And that's all I have. If you have any questions. Okay.
Thanks,
great.
Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Next up is Administrator, I have one resolution, Resolution 17040, accepting amendments to the Code of Regulations for the Northwest Ohio Advanced Energy Improvement District. I have Attorney John Burrell here who will address what exactly this is.
Evening.
Hi, John.
These are basically technical amendments to the bylaws, expanding the name to include Sylvania and Springfield townships, and also to expand the area to include those 2 townships. They do juggle with the voting a little bit. Up to this point, municipalities were given 2 votes, but with more municipalities joining the district, that became unwieldy. The board became too large, so they're dropping down the representation of municipalities just to 1, just like townships get. So it's except for that, it's by and large just technical in nature.
Any questions?
No, thank you. I'll offer Resolution 1704, accepting of amendments to the Code of Regulation of the Northwest Ohio Advanced Energy Improvement District. Boy, say that 5 times.
Second.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genoway?
Yes.
Next up is Mr. Simcoe.
John?
Oh.
Were you going to talk about that road vacation? No?
The viewing of it?
Well, we had a viewing, but we had to get back to the county.
I sent,
Oh, you did?
I got a thing from the school, I put it in my administrative letter, I got a thing from the school and I sent it to
I thought,
the engineer, but
okay, I thought they needed a decision from us. I'm supporting it. Remember Dennis Pritchard's email?
right, but I don't know if you meant by resolution or if we just have concerns that would be addressed by the,
I thought you said-
by the engineer. Well, it kind of changed when I was at the viewing, what Denny was saying and that, so.
Okay. If you're satisfied, I am.
Under the fiscal officer, we have the month-end analysis, and again, we're only 3 months into all this, and so, although it's good to see that the standard percentage for expenditures will be 25%, 3 months. And we're below that in really all of our departments, which is really good. The only one is the general fund, and that's because we made a TIF payment, as it says in your notes here. But, we kind of, as we budget here, you guys know, we work with the departments, there's input from us, input from them on expenditures. And I think our departments, again, watch their expenditures. They're kind of into the program, so to speak, of us watching what we're spending. And so they get to help make the budget, but they also we charge them with responsibility of keeping within it. And so I think they're doing it, at least so far this year, nothing startling. And then I have a resolution 17-039, and it's basically for some computer services. There's going to be some training, I think, out of the fire department at one of their locations. And you remember that we've been bringing some resolutions. We have had additional expenditures on computer services because we've changed computer systems here, so we've had to spend a little bit more money. Hopefully that'll settle down. But rather than coming back every meeting almost and moving $500, we thought that we would just move $5,000 into the account. It's not a huge sum, and this way we wouldn't have to keep coming back. So I recommend we pass this.
I'll offer resolution 17-039, appropriation from encumbered balance.
Second.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Dunaway?
Yes.
And then the next thing that I have on the agenda is, I forwarded out to the trustees back in, April 10th, a copy of a memorandum of understanding between the township and the city of Sylvania. You'll remember that, I think when John Crandall first started his chairmanship, the trustees kind of charged him with exploring, having conversations with the city concerning JEDs and CETAs and annexation agreements. And so I kind of started out with them, but I had to drop out after a few meetings. I was having trouble making the meetings when they were able to do them. So John Zeigler stepped in and took my spot. And so, this is the agreement that I sent out to you that's, and we used Wanda Carter, if you remember. We had Wanda Carter involved in this. And I really view it as kind of almost like an agreement to agree. I mean, it's we agree with them that we may agree on something, and that, and in a lawyer's view, I mean, I think it's not binding us or binding them. It's just opening up some avenues of conversation with them about these things. And again, we may agree not to agree with them on a particular project, or we may agree. And then it does set up some guidelines as to how we would share any revenues from this stuff. So the other thing it might have, and I'm really not advocating it one way or the other, I'm just trying to show you what's there. There may be some financial benefits, like for example on the JED, they're harder to do now, but if you would have some vacant property that the city will never get to annex because, or at least in our lifetimes, but it may be a large some acreage that's raw land and could be like developed. You might be able to formulate a JED with them where you would then end up having some revenue sharing. They're not always easy to put together, but it's a possibility. And the revenue sharing would be beneficial to the township because you institute a tax on that property, a small tax, and then the city and the township would share it. And there's some conversation and there's some exhibit here that talks about that. And so it may have some positive things for us financially. We wouldn't be getting any revenue from that property, like income tax revenue. And but that's how jets kind of work. There's sometimes a sharing of revenue, but the people have to vote on it and this stuff. It's not that easy to do anymore. The laws changed a little bit on jets and CETA. So I sent it out so you could take a look at it. But I thought that we ought to have a vote on it, up or down, because I think the city will be doing the same thing on this too, and someone has to go first. It's been sitting around for a while, so I thought I'd just put on the agenda and we could have some conversation if you guys would like, and then do a vote one way or the other. But it could be beneficial to, if nothing else, there's some conversation rather than just something come listening in here and just saying, what's this all about? There would hopefully have been some conversation, is what I think. But again, an agreement to agree doesn't bind us or the city, by the way, to do anything. So that's my spiel on it.
Well presented.
I wondered what piece of this was put into our land use plan. I mean, are we asking the people what's important to them and why are they moving to Sylvania Township? Because I tell you, just in the past 3 or 4 months, I've gotten probably a half dozen calls from business owners in Renaissance Place down the street saying that they keep hearing rumors that, they're going to get annexed by the city, and they tell me they specifically moved here to be in the township because we don't charge an income tax. So, as we get to, as we spend $60,000 on this land use plan, how is this shift going to really impact that piece? And I just can't, I agree that someone's got to get into it, and I certainly appreciate the time that you and Trustee Crandall have put into it, but I think that it might be premature as we start to look at this, and again, I think it's important to get feedback from the community rather than just the 3 of us voting on it because we've seen it. I mean, I'd like to get it out on our website and see what people think about it, but again, I think the majority of the people, and that's what we clearly saw in the merger study, is that people move here because we don't charge an income tax, and if that changes, because every property out there is going to then fall under a JED, I'm just wondering how that's going to shift people's focus on Sylvania Township.
Let's say Mahoney Manufacturing has a business that they'd like to be in the city, but really the only available land is in the township, but they want to be part of the city. A part of a city, not necessarily Sylvania, but a city. That would be a discussion because there's really that memorandum of understanding is not holding anybody. We can certainly, if the city has a project that we don't feel is comfortable with it, if they want to annex, we still have every right to disagree with that. I mean, there's nothing in that body that discusses, that puts us to the fire that we have to agree upon that. I think one of the things that I liked about it was the fact that at least there might be some mutual respect with the city with regards to what their intentions would be in the future. And I think that that allows us to budget, and we can't really do a land use. You put a land use plan, but we really can't. For example, I know recently that somebody wanted to be annexed, and somebody from the city approached a property owner to be annexed, and they're like, no. So but our land use plan, how can we work our land use plan at doing? You're right, it's a catch-22, but I don't necessarily have over the problem with this memorandum of understanding. And Dave, like you said, it's not like we're trying to start we're at first base here. We're just trying to get the juices flowing between the two entities and see if we can continue to work with them in the future. And more
like on our way to first base. It's not even first base. It's some conversations that we would be able to have with them, and hopefully, we wouldn't be being surprised. We would have a meeting. They would talk to us about it, and maybe we could dissuade them, but maybe we couldn't. But at least we would have a heads up, and we're not flat-footed or on something like this. That does open up a conversation, hopefully.
I'm surprised you're not having those conversations at your CIC luncheons and things. I mean, that's, again, has been a little bit disappointing, and certainly the way you present it certainly makes good sense. But again, I focus back to, hey, we've been a good partner. I don't know of anybody who's come to the city and asked to be in the township. We may have worked with the city on several things,
Well,
but...
I'll give you a lot of examples where that
Okay.
happened. That's happened all over the city of Toledo, out in Monclova Township.
Well, we're dealing with the city of
But
Sylvania.
I'm saying, I'm trying
Yeah.
to relate to a similar scenario.
Yeah.
You had Dana Corporation, that was in Monclova Township, but they wanted to be in the city. You had All-Shred, they were in the township in Monclova, and they wanted to be in the city. They're not even close to the city of Toledo, but they're in the city of Toledo out there. I'm not saying this could ever happen out here. I'm just citing as an example of where that could effectively work, where that business wanted to be in the city of Toledo. For whatever reason, maybe the Port Authority made them. I have no idea, but sometimes there's a reason that a company wants to be in the city. Now, I prefer to have them in the township. That's the only example. That's one of my main examples. I was thinking I could see where this could work.
We're really not even up at bat if I put it in the first base or whatever. But I don't think it hurts to be talking. This calls for 3 meetings a year with the city to see if there are opportunities when they're annexing to maybe work out revenue sharing. As you know, we don't have much when they annex. Hopefully we can get a share of that revenue, but if we can't, we can't. They've got all the tools. I've worked long and hard on this with the help of Wanda Carter, but to me, it's a first step. If we can't sit down and talk about it, we're never going to go anywhere. And that's really all this calls for. It's 3 meetings a year.
Have you presented it to the CIC or anything? Have we gotten any feedback other than what?
To my knowledge, CIC is not involved in this at all.
Why aren't they? I mean, aren't they kind of a joint economic development group here?
They're more of a financing arm. This is more intricate, not even intricate, we're not even at first base. The CIC arm is more of a financing arm.
Okay.
So we're not doing any financing here. We're
Well,
not,
Citizens Improvement Corp. doesn't stress a finance, but again, I think it's difficult to pass something like this with no feedback from our community. And I think it's great we're finally discussing it, but I think it would be important to have other people take a look at it before we vote on it. But if you guys are ready for it, I think it's a good
I'll
thing.
offer Resolution 170441 to adopt a mutual understanding between Sylvania Township and the city of Sylvania.
Second.
Call the roll, Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genoway?
No.
Next item on the agenda is under open discussion, an update on Sajar and
I
Sylvania.
did want to, I don't know if this would be the time to do it as well, but, we all got an email from Mike Hampton from Springfield Township about the regional water.
Yes.
I know we contributed $10,000 to help that study.
5.
Was it 5 or 10?
5.
Okay. I was a little bit surprised to see that we're not being involved in the conversations and things. Again, I just feel like we're getting left at the side of the table here, and, we've been an integral part. We're a fairly large number to a lot of people, and...
I've got to call into Brian Dickens. Brian Dickens is the government liaison for the Chamber of Commerce. They've committed $94,000 to the study, and I'm a board member of the Toledo Chamber, and I mentioned to Brian on my way out, we will be meeting soon, that we'd like to maybe have an opportunity to be at the table.
Yeah.
Because they're kicking in $94,000, and they're voting, and the voting members of that is, so I'm not giving any guarantees, but I do want to have that conversation with the chamber, and I will report back to you guys with my results of that.
Okay.
And I would add that I think if you look at if you look at the townships that participated in the study, but that request was the city of Sylvania. It wasn't Timacock. But if you look at that, there's a pretty good population there. And I feel there should be township representation. Now, I don't know if it's every township, but as a group, there's a good population there. Bigger than
There's
the
9
city.
voters right now.
Bigger than
Yeah.
the city of Oregon or city of Maumee, so I think there should be some participation.
Yeah, all the voters now are the cities and the county,
Yeah, I think there's
and no
209.
townships at all, so
Is the city and the county, do they get 2 votes or just 1 vote? Do we know
they're
that?
2 separate entities.
They
Yeah, but I
have-
know initially they were talking about trying to have more
I've
than 1
heard
vote.
different combinations. I don't think.
I'll
I
report.
mean, I don't know the number of votes they get, because they're still arguing, like, does the city get more votes?
One each? Okay, thanks, JB.
So far.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only thing that's been formed is a committee.
Here, come on up here.
All the discussion so far has been in this committee through TMACOG, where the municipalities, the Northwest Ohio Water District and Monroe County, because they're a customer of the city of Toledo, each have 1 vote. There's no townships. The next step will be, and the money that the chamber contributed was to hire a mediator, facilitator, whatever you want to call them, to work with the parties to try to see if they can form a regional water district. And right now, if there is a regional water district, who's going to sit on that is really up in the air. They haven't even gotten that far yet. They haven't even decided whether they're going to have a regional water district, what form it takes, or if they just have a unified contract. The municipalities in the county would rather form a regional district. The Toledo, at least so far, would rather just have a unified contract. So that's what this facilitator is supposed to do. So they're still at very, very early stages, and if the townships want representation on the regional district, should one be formed, this would be the time to make that known, because they really have not gone far in how it's going to be formed yet.
Let me ask you, how do we make it known? You said they, who's they?
Well, TMACOG is the one that's hosted these meetings. There's another one, 27th, I think, 27th at 7:30, where they're going to vote on this facilitator. The chairman of this meeting, of this group that's being meeting through TMACOG, is Commissioner Gurkin. Mayor Stile is the vice chairman, as well as the mayor of Perrysburg, Mike, I can't think of his last name. So one of those 3, you should probably get in touch with to know that the townships would like to participate. And I know that Mike Hampton is already, I think he might have already spoken to somebody, because he came up to me after one of the meetings and was asking me about this.
And I think the chamber's thought is if we're paying this kind of money, there are other chambers in the outlying areas that have a lot of citizens, and they feel a portion of the folks at the chamber feel that if they're kicking in a lot of money, there ought to be some voices at the table other than the county making an overlay decision on that. And that's what my thought was, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's a terrible idea, but my thought is to talk to the government liaison that's helping get that funding from the state to see if we can have a seat at the table.
Yeah, this would be the time to do it, because it's still very much up in the air.
And I could be dead wrong, probably maybe I'm could be wasting my time, and I wanted to try.
In a sense, the assumption has always been that the townships, because you get your water through the county, are represented by the county. But townships can break off on their own. You could break off on your own and get water from someplace else if you wanted to. It probably would be expensive, but you could.
I don't think that would be my intent.
No, and it would be,
But I
yeah.
think one seat at the table
Yeah.
certainly at least gets the township situation.
I know some of the drafts of,
61 now.
yeah, Elaine and I were on the legal committee, and some of the early drafts of what the regional board would look like included representation, at least one representation from the townships. But they still haven't gotten to whether or not there will be a regional board yet, regional district. So again, everything is still very, very preliminary.
Thanks,
Are you
Jamie.
suggesting we send a letter to Pete Gurkin as chairman then? I mean, we should do something.
Yes, I think he's the chairman of it. I think that's probably who you should talk to. I mentioned Commissioner Contrada is chairman of the legal committee. After a conversation with Mike Hampton, I said to her that Springfield and perhaps some of the other townships would like to be represented. I don't know what she did with that, but I did mention that I had that conversation with Mike Hampton.
Maybe could you arrange a joint letter, maybe between Springfield and Sylvania? Sure. How does that sound? And actually, Monclova was referenced in that email also.
It would be another very big
Maybe the
township.
3 of us.
Yeah.
See about a joint letter.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, John.
Good. The next thing is, I wanted to give you guys an update. Last week, Ms. Such and I met with Sajard's representation and Baron Black. I provided some copies here for you.
Thanks, John.
Yep. In the first one, they based the deferred compensation for Mr. Catafias off a 2006 motion that was by Mr. Contrada. He was the president at the time, for a possible implementation of a supplemental retirement program. And the motion passed by 9-0. It was noted at the time the adjustment was made for the 2006 and 7 budgets moving forward. I did speak to 3, which is 30% of the board members that voted on that, and they were very surprised that this type of interpretation led to the payoff. Secondly, I've included the consulting agreement that is to Ken Catafias for the $400,000. It's surprising because in the initial amendment, it speaks of a supplemental retirement, and in the 2014 and 15 financials, it's referred to as a deferred compensation program, I believe like 9 or 10 times, but the actual contract is a consulting fee. So that had some rarities to it. Most concerning in there is I've included some emails back and forth to the state auditor. The state auditor has concluded that they do not have any oversight over Sylvania Rec or Tam O'Shanter. So they have never been audited, they do not get audited, and they're kind of washing their hands. So I've got concerns over how it went from a deferred compensation to a consulting agreement, and then not having any oversight to make sure that they're doing things properly. Mr. Smith, are those two, could you book those in the same category, a deferred compensation and a consulting agreement? I think a consulting would be an expense, and deferred comp is a long-term liability. Again, I'm not at a, I don't want to put you on the spot here, maybe it's wrong. The other thing I'd like to note is I did then contact the IRS. If the state auditor's office is not looking at it, then it would go to the IRS, and they are required to file 990 documents, which they have never filed, which is, again, very concerning. And the one thing that kind of surprised me, I just learned of it yesterday, is that Tam O'Shanter and Sylvania Rec have the same EIN number. And so the CPA that I consulted thought that Tam O'Shanter could be set up as a doing business as Tam O'Shanter under Sylvania Rec as a wholly owned subsidiary. Is that correct, Mr. Crandall?
How would I know that?
Well, on our own website, you were a founding member of Sajard, so I kind of think it's kind of fortunate that you're sitting here with me to answer some
Well,
questions.
the board's changed a lot since then, John.
It has changed a lot, but you were a founding member.
So again, what do you want to do, John?
Well, I don't know, Neil. Does that raise enough concern for you to at least, as a board member, a current board member, could you do this board a favor and ask the board when you next meet at Sajard, who does your audits? Aaron Black told Ms. Zutch and I that they get audited by the state. Now, I've got documentation that they don't. So how can it be construed that they're getting audited by the state when the state very clearly, through 2 conversations, through Randy Turner and myself, and now emails from Elaine McGinnis telling me, which are included, telling me that no, we've never audited them and we don't audit them. So could you find out, I know Casey Nowicki's on that board, he's a CPA, and I know Mr. John Monahan has a very good relationship with the state auditor's office. If they could determine who's doing their audits, that would certainly clear up some of this confusion.
So, to answer your question, first of all, here's the IRS for your,
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that or not. That's the form that allows them not to have to file. Second of all,
Well,
go ahead.
if this is accurate.
I don't know if it is or not. That's what I have that.
Well, that was based on them getting audited by the state. So now we found out that the state isn't auditing them. So these forms that Ken Catafias filed back in 2000, where did he, oh, here it is. In 2001, Mr. Catafaias filed for that exempt status from the IRS. So I think somewhere along the line, there's been some confusion here over who has oversight to this entity.
Okay. All right, so 2 months ago, when did we approve this? How long ago?
February 7th.
Okay, February 7th. So we approved this on February 7th.
Yep.
And what we did was we approved for a public notice to provide this information. And what I'm seeing here is you still have some questions. And as a township, John or Elaine, if you guys help me out here. As a township, we're kind of in uncharted territory here as a township. We really have three options. Call the police, call the auditor, figure it out, or you have an attorney do it yourself. But we're, as a township, as a government entity, this is not us. I went along and approved a public records request, but to go to the next level and start digging down even deeper, I don't have the energy or the time, and I'm not smart enough to figure it out.
Yeah, the original task you gave to us was to make the public records request, actually to as I think it's worded, to ask for the documents to find out the relationship between the three entities, to see if specifically if Sylvania Rec was subject to the Public Records Act. And we made that public records request. That became moot when the attorney for the Rec District, for Sylvania Rec, who's now Fritz Byers for this matter, said, I don't want to have in that discussion, I'll just give you all the records. So that point became moot. So we have completed whatever that initial resolution wanted us to do. I guess what we need is what you want us to do at this point. If there is some concern that there is criminal conduct or some financial impropriety, then that should probably go to the entity, especially if you think there's criminal conduct, that probably should go to the proper law enforcement agency that would investigate that. Or if there's some financial impropriety on the part of SAGI, that could go to the auditor's office, not for Rec or not for Sylvania Rec or the TAMO, because they are not public entities. They would not be audited by the state auditor. So that should go there. I guess for us at this point is this board has to tell us what you want us to do. If you want us to do anything else, where you want to go from here.
I never saw the request. I don't know if you did, Neil.
I never saw it, Mr. Crandall.
I know we had a motion. And does this answer the request? This is the first time I've seen this.
Well, no, because I think he's specific, I think well, he just answered it when he said they have not responded whether they're a public entity to be open to the FOIA requests. So they've given me some documents, but again, they somehow got confused in the documents they provided, and the majority of their documents were Sylvania Area Joint Rec District, which is a public entity. And to me, as a township trustee who represents a third of that board, Neil, it is somewhat, our responsibility to look into it. So I wish Mr. Burrell would conclude whether we have the rights to ask for documents from these organizations. I mean, that was great. Mr. Byers was a very nice person, and Baron Black met there as well. Everybody was fine, but I'm still asking whether that organization has to respond to the Freedom of Information Act. And that's where I've had concerns all along. And Neil, you seem, and I think a lot of times when you ask for certain documents, they interchange the terminology from Sylvania Rec to Sylvania Joint Rec. And that's where...
All the more why my argument is... Go ahead, finish what
No,
you
I mean, that's...
I mean, all the why more of the argument is me as a board member, as a township trustee, that has no idea about the state auditor. I don't have any understanding of their intricacies with regards to what we can and can't provide. I think as a township, that's not ours anymore. We did what we needed to do and bring these public documents to light. If there's anything else, if any three of us wanted to investigate, if there's anybody out here that wanted to investigate it, they're more than happy to. But I just don't think it needs to be under the guise of the township anymore. We've gotten what we needed to get. And you obviously have more questions. And I want you to have a lot of questions. I'm not against you having questions. I'm not overly excited about the township supporting this.
I'm not sure
I mean, where do we go from here? Do we just?
Well, I've asked for a few follow-up documents,
Okay, cool.
and I'm waiting for them, and I've also requested them from the state auditor's office.
Awesome.
And, you know, I still think it's, I mean, if you get a chance, and I know it wasn't fair presenting them to you, I'm kind of giving you an off-the-cuff update on this stuff. But, I mean, 3 of the 9 board members who voted for what they all were under assumption was a 401K plan, then turned into a $400,000 consulting contract without a board vote in 2014, it certainly raises the level of concern.
No question, and what's disappointing is that as us, as a township board, we've hired, maybe one of those 3 were who we recommended, and it's unfortunate that their homework wasn't done prior, because I know my homework would have done prior to sitting in the board, and I'd known exactly what I was voting on.
I'm not sure I see who's present. Do you know who the township reps are?
I'm assuming Carol Contrada. It was,
Well,
Carol and Charlie were both on the board at the same time.
Well, was Charlie a township rep or?
I do not know that. He was the president at the time of the board.
You apparently talked to 3 of these. I heard.
Yes.
Were any of them township reps or?
You know what, I didn't ask that question, to be honest.
Well, that's all right. I'm just
I
looking at this for.
I know Mike Bader was a township rep, correct?
Mike was, yeah.
Mr. Burrell, was your son a township rep, do you know?
Was he on that time? No.
He was.
He would have been a city councilman then, so he must have been a city
Yeah,
rep.
City council, so he's out. Carol Contrada would have been ours,
And Speece would have been schools.
schools. I don't know what the difference is there, I just,
Well, I'm just wondering.
yeah.
And, yeah, I guess, the other thing I think about with this thing is, just look, I had a chance to look at past board members for years, and a lot of them are really stand-up people, and to have this, they meet bi-weekly, all the departments, I mean, somebody's got to be really, really good at what they do to be able to do something against this process, and I just don't see it.
Neil, can I go over a timeline with you one more time?
Sure.
In August of 2012, I called the state auditor's office and talked to Mr. Kevin Pegish. At that time, I told him I estimated about $250,000 was missing from Centennial Terrace.
Okay.
At that time, he said he would look into those concerns. Followed up with him for a year and a half. He never responded to my concerns. Then I talked to Derek Marin. He put me with somebody else. Then I met with another special fraud investigator, drove down to Sydney, Ohio, and gave them a lot of documentation that supported my concerns. 4.5 years later, the state auditor's office, well, in that time, 3 months after I raised my initial concerns, the manager from Centennial Terrace resigns. Then a year after that to date, Ken Catafaias retires. And so 4.5 years goes by, and I continue to follow up with the state auditor's office, only for them to call me this December and say, we've got nothing to do with these guys. So again, my frustration was truly with the state auditor's office, and they should have been able to tell me that information within certainly a week.
Right, instead of 5.5 years?
Yes, 4.5 years. And so then to find out that when these people left, they were heavily compensated for leaving. I mean, one of the reasons Jamie Moan cited to me personally, and I don't know, I feel comfortable saying it, but he told me that, you know what, he didn't see any advancement. He was the number 2 guy, never saw Ken leaving. Ken was 62 years old at the time, and he thought Ken would be here forever. Then suddenly, abruptly, Ken leaves a year later, and it just, again, was like, he was a 62-year-old guy, and he left. And that the Sylvania Rec has a 401K. So I was just surprised that they would give him a $400,000 consulting agreement. Both of you, while you sat on the board the last several years, have you ever known Catafaias to consult, or has he ever showed up at any of the meetings? Or I just wonder what he's doing for $80,000 a year, which is certainly more than most people make in our community.
This is the first time I've seen this agreement.
Well, I saw a week ago today, it took them 2.5 months to produce it. So, again, I'm bringing it as much to speed as possible.
Well, I guess I don't know where we go from here. You know what, I have seen in public document records, being in the insurance business, as you know, we get lawsuits all the time that come into our office. And when our auditors come in, or when people look at our books, I basically throw them in a room, I turn the heat up real high, and I don't serve them any coffee or water. And if they want to go get lunch, they go get lunch. You had one of the top attorneys, a Duke University graduate, Fritz Byers, a great attorney in this town.
He is.
That sat there 3 hours with you and went through these documents.
Well, Neil, doesn't that sound...
But
We're talking about a park district. What did they need to hire a Duke graduate who probably was charging $300 to $500 an hour?
Questions, and our taxpayers had our attorney there for 3 hours. What I'm trying to get at here is, I'm not sure what we want, what is our goal, what do we want to accomplish, and if it's something that you want to do personally, I have no problem with it.
Okay.
This is out of our scope of work as a township, and we're in charge of fire, police, roads. Hey, here's the other thought. Maybe the city of Sylvania wants to join us, or join you. Maybe the school district was. These two-thirds of the group think it's in pretty good shape. You're not sold on it? Then I think it's something...
Can we have Mr. Burrell determine whether these organizations fall under the Freedom of Information Act? Can we have that determination?
I'm missing. What are we looking for?
Whether or not Sylvania Rec and Sylvania Tam O'Shanter would be entities that would be subject, at least in part, to the Public Records Act. Frankly, I've always thought Sylvania Rec was, by and large. They may do things that aren't covered, but I think they are, by and large, covered by the Public Records Act. And Fritz would agree. That's why Fritz is giving up documents without making that fight. However, Tam O'Shanter, I don't think so. Tam O'Shanter basically just holds the leases to those buildings, that facility. That's about all they really do, as far as I can tell. So they probably aren't. But Sylvania Rec...
Could we have the incorporation documents again? As I looked them up under the IRS, they came up as the same EIN number. So are they the same entity, or are they a separate for-profit corporation that I've been told? You know what, Neil, here's a good example that I have. One of our Sylvania Township trustees, Wilkinson, out on Centennial Road, said they lost over $100,000 worth of business when Tam O'Shanter went into this silk screen business. I mean, and again, it was a directive from the schools that they had to use Tam O'Shanter's silk screen. I mean, hey, that's a resident of ours who pays a fair amount of tax. I've seen their houses, I've seen their properties. They're calling. It's not just,
Well, okay, I don't know. I mean, what's the difference between us and hiring EMS services when we're the private sector to buffer our business? Maybe Wilkinson didn't want to grow. Maybe it could be a lot of different things. John, how you ask me a question? How can I answer a question like that?
Well, no, you say that it's not the township's role, and I'm saying, first off, we put it on the ballot for the property tax, don't we? We vote on whether to put that on the ballot.
Which tax?
Sage Yard?
No, they do their own. They're a taxing authority, as I understand it.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, they're like,
So,
they're their own.
But their board has to approve it. The board.
Townships involved in that.
I mean, anybody could do what you're doing here if you want to continue going down this path.
Well,
of the request. Why? I agreed to it, John. I was with you on all aboard 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
But now I just don't see an end. I don't know what the end game is. And if you've got something that you want to pursue further than what I'm comfortable with, then I suggest...
Well, I'm asking Mr. Burrell if he would clarify whether those two organizations, and I would like both of them looked at and determined, Sylvania Rec Corp. and Sylvania Tam O'Shanter, Inc., whether they are public entities or whether they fall under, because certainly, Neil, as you presented this documentation, it shows me that, they filed to be a public entity, and certainly the information I have too from the IRS states that they filed to be a public entity, but somehow they don't want to have the dialogue whether they fall under the Freedom of Information Act. I mean, that's kind of odd.
Sylvania Rec doesn't want to have the dialogue because they've agreed to give you what documents that we've asked for.
Well,
They're not,
As you know, I've had concerns in the past where those requests have gone on deaf ears, and that's why I specifically brought you in to clarify that. So I don't want to go back a month from now having them not answer my questions and not having them answer my concerns.
And I support you with that.
I know. I appreciate that. And certainly I've got an email out there, again, requesting the sources of cash, how much cash, and what any process is, and that's when they really dummied up and wouldn't respond to, my following emails. And then that's when people started leaving the organization shortly thereafter. So,
I don't know, as many employees as I go through a year, I don't even think about, I don't know. People get a better job because they get raises, or maybe they have family life, or maybe wife works and he doesn't want to work. I don't know, I'm not going to try to sit here and try to
I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I think if you look at the line of events that I presented, it certainly has enough of a concern that I don't know if it's the township's responsibility or not, but certainly I have taken it up as a pet project, and I'm willing to pursue it, and I appreciate your support on it at the last meeting, and certainly I was surprised that with such an attorney as Fritz Byers, it took them over 2.5 months to get back to me, but certainly it was a lot of information that I requested, and they did provide it, and Neil, they didn't turn up the heat on me, and they did offer me bottled water, and again, they were very friendly, and again, so I appreciate that, but again, they seem to mix up the documents from Sylvania Rec and Sylvania Sage Yard, which...
That's because I asked for documents for both. So that's why you would have gotten both, because I asked for a lot of documents from Sage Yard, because that's where initially I was trying to determine what the relationship is with Sylvania Rec. That became less important, because once they got Fritz, he agreed to give up...
So what was your determination after you reviewed those documents?
Well, I've always thought that Sylvania Rec, by and large, would be subject to the public record. Not that they're a public entity, but there are some provisions of the law which allow public entities or private entities to be subject to the Public Records Act if they're considering if they're doing a public function. And certainly Sylvania Rec does. They're incorporated. Their incorporation documents list that they're incorporated to carry out some of the purposes of Sage Yard. So Tam O'Shammer, I don't think so. But so far, no one has told me, either from TAMO or from Sylvania Rec, we're not going to give you public records because we're not subject to it. No one has made
O'Shammer did in the meeting that...
TAMO, and I would question whether, some of the documents regarding TAMO, though, we can get from the city, because the leases, and they should have been in the documents that were provided, because I know Leslie Brenning, the city law director, said she gave them the leases from the city. So some of the documents they have, because they have a close relationship with the city, even though we can't get from them, we can get them from, we're provided by the city of Sylvania.
So is that the only tie-in? I mean, they seem to provide the same services in terms of youth sports and youth activities. I just question how one can be open and the other be, a for-profit corporation when when their only payment and responsibility to the tax entity, which is Sage Yard, is the excess profits goes to the rent of a $20 to $25 million facility, and those types of that information is not disclosed. I just, and so I have requested, what are the salaries? Because if you're looking to get rid of a lot of excess profits, they go to bonuses and salaries and those sort of things. So, again, I don't think I'm asking for anything that's completely off the wall, and certainly I followed the trail. I mean, again, Mr. Contrada discussed an adjustment to the 2006 budget for a possible implementation of a supplemental retirement program, turns into a $400,000 consulting fee. I mean, I think that's a big jump, Neil. I mean, and Mr. Crandall, you said you guys didn't vote on this in 2014? And you know what, one little other surprising fact?
Why 14?
Pardon?
What's 14?
That's when Ken retired, and that's when this consulting contract went into place, and that's when you were on the board.
I'm not aware of
Well, you had to have approved the funding for it in 2015 and 14.
that. In the budget, you mean?
Yes.
Well, I guess that'd be like our budget. You could, you get the big budget. I don't know that you get...
Well, maybe that's how a lot of our concerned citizens sit by and pass things without really looking into them. Well, a $400,000 payout, Mr. Crandall, certainly should rise to some level of discussion at a board level. I think if Neil and I pulled that on you, you would be kind of upset that you weren't involved in a discussion, conversation, and things. And you were on the board. And the person who signed that, Mr. Mike Bader, He resigned from the board shortly after signing this agreement with Ken Catafias. After sitting on the board for over 15 years, I believe, abruptly resigns.
15 years? I don't know that. I mean, John, you're throwing out a lot of stuff that I don't think is here. I don't know Mr. Wilkinson, and he's never called me that he lost 100,000 and silk screening. I mean, you know.
You are aware that they bought Michigan Silk Screening?
Yes.
Cameron? Yes, yeah.
I'm aware of that, but I've never heard that took business from. And you're throwing a lot of stuff out here.
I am, and I kind of wanted it to be on the record. That's why I'm doing it here in public rather than behind closed doors. I mean, I want a documentation.
I'm glad you did.
No, and I don't want to take up too much time. I mean, like I mentioned at the beginning of our meeting, I know we've got a full plate. But I do appreciate you giving me this opportunity to give the update.
Thank you.
Mr. Burrell, can we expect that answer?
I think I've given the answer, at least to the Sylvania Rec District. I believe they are, by and large, subject to the Public Records Act.
Can we get that clarified, so if I do have requests, and I would also like at least your decision or formation of a conclusion on Sylvania Tam O'Shanter.
Okay.
And therefore, we can pursue that. And I think that would require, the formation documents, the tie-in between the organizations. I know the city owns the property, Sage Yard owns the building, and Tam O'Shanter leases it for excess profits. So
I think the city owns the property and the building. It's titled in the name of the city, anyway.
I believe Sage Yard owns the building.
The county property records show the whole property title to the city of Sylvania. When you own a building, you can lease the building. I've heard of having a building owned by an entity other than the one that owns the property. I'm not even sure you can do that, because that's a fixture.
Okay.
So if you own the real property, you have to own the fixtures. Dave, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's something different than I think we continue to learn as this thing goes along.
TAMO leases the buildings from the city, but the city owns, I was surprised to hear the city owned them. I was surprised when we discovered that the city still owned them. Right, what I can do, as you know, I have a follow-up meeting scheduled with Fritz for Thursday. What I will do with him is confirm that he views that they are subject to the public records and is going to give us. I already have a call in to the attorney who represents, because Fritz does not represent TAMO, attorney who represents TAMO, but he has not responded. Asking him the same question, to see whether or not he agrees that they are subject to the Public Records Act or not. He has not responded to that yet.
Okay.
Because there's no sense having a fight with them if they're, like in the case of Sylvania Rec, they agree to give it to us. There's really nothing to fight at that point.
Well, it's nice when I have a free attorney asking. They seem to be a lot more accommodating. If I was doing this on my own, it appears that Mr. Mahoney would prefer me to do it on my own. So if I do decide to follow up with some documentation, I would like the assurance that, they will cooperate.
John, I would have had my own attorney. I would have not asked the public to start this process. I mean, we did what we did. We want to continue. You've got some valid questions, and I appreciate your effort in this. I just think it's out of our scope of work, and that it still needs to, the three options lie as call the police, get an attorney, call the state.
Okay.
I will say Fritz Byer's involvement in this made it a lot easier, because Fritz knows the public records law, and I've had a lot of cases with Fritz over the years. He's not the kind of guy to fool around. I mean, if he thinks the law is such a way, that's what he does. So I always view his involvement in any matter as a positive involvement, because he's very good, very ethical, and he cut through a lot of the stuff here. He wasn't going to have a fight about things that there were no need to have a fights about. He essentially agreed. He said he told me whether or not they are a public entity, they operate with, as part of what people consider the public entity, and they should be giving up those documents whether they technically have to or not. And that's what I would expect from somebody like Fritz.
I'd like that technically not or so clarified.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I will ask him, and I've said I've already had a communication out to the attorney who represents TAMO.
And thanks for spending all the time you did.
Yeah, I know. Thanks. I'd like to offer a motion to go into executive session at 6:08 for personnel matters, and employment, and administration.
Second.
Randall?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Let me get these signed up, these girls. didn't mean to have to do it.
Little cooler in here, maybe Mahoney took that advice and turned the heating up in the conference room.
When the auditors come in, we make their life hell in there.
We're both running. We're both
Okay.
live.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to come out of executive session at 6:42.
Second.
Having no action been taken, I would like to offer,
Better
No, no.
put on the-
Oh,
now. So
okay.
let's, Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
yes. No action being taken, I'd like to offer a motion to adjourn at 6:43.
Second.
Mr. Randall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Dennis?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Susan, there's one more I need to get to that I lost.
Did not run out of ink.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I'm sure I got it. I'm sure I lost it.
Hey, Dino,
Yeah.
he was Harvard Law. Rich is.
Oh, he wasn't, I thought he was.
Undergrad.
Uh-oh.